Her touch meant instant death. His touch meant survival. On the desert world of Hesperus, two outcasts bound by a rope must navigate sandwolves, marauders, and a terrifying secret that could save them both, or destroy everything they touch. What happens when a cursed researcher meets a battle-scarred veteran who isn't afraid to get close? The ship lay broken in the sand, its metal ribs twisted up toward the twin suns. Cole moved through the wreckage with methodical precision. His gloved hands sorted through debris looking for anything useful: power cells, ration packs, salvageable gear. He expected to find corpses. He did not expect to find her. She hid in the shadow of a collapsed bulkhead. Her knees were drawn to her chest. Strange dark patterns marked her arms like veins of black lightning. Her uniform was torn but still bore the Earth Botanical Research insignia. When she looked up, her eyes held no hope, only warning. "Stay back," she whispered. Her voice cracked from thirst. "Don't come any closer." A desert fox drawn by the scent of spilled rations brushed against her leg. The contact lasted less than a second. The creature made a short, choked sound. It shuddered violently, then collapsed into the crimson dust. Its body went still. No wound, no blood. Just sudden, silent death. Cole froze. He kept his distance but didn't retreat. His eyes went from the dead animal to the woman. He recognized the uniform patch, a white leaf on a blue circle. Earth Science Corps. Not military. Not a fighter. Yet she carried death like a second skin. She watched him, waiting for him to run. When he didn't, she spoke again. Her words were flat, hollow. "My gift is a curse. Everything I touch dies." She held up her hands. They trembled. "My skin, my sweat, my breath. It's all poison." Cole studied her. He saw the fear, but also the truth in her eyes. She wasn't lying. He calculated the risk. A crash survivor with a lethal condition. A walking biological hazard. Most men would have turned and never looked back. But Cole had seen worse things than death. He had caused some of them. He stayed where he was. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't speak. He just watched. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the wind stirring the sand. He made a choice in that moment. Not to save her. Not to help her. But to not run. It was a start. It was enough. She told him about the flower. It was part of her assignment. A small scarlet bloom that grew only in the deep shade of Hesperus's rock canyons. The local people called it the scorpion's tear. Their story said it could ease pain, mend broken bones, quiet a feverish mind. The company wanted to study it. They wanted to replicate its properties, patent a new medicine, turn a desert myth into profit. One day, while collecting samples, she brushed against a thorn. It was a small cut, barely worth noting, but the plant's sap entered her bloodstream. It did not kill her. It did something worse. She described the feeling as fire flooding her veins, a heat that burned from the inside out. Her nervous system rewired itself around the foreign agent. The toxin didn't just poison her. It became a part of her. Her research logs listed the flower's potential applications: pain suppression, neural regeneration. There were pages of data, promising results from early lab tests on tissue samples. But nothing in the official documentation mentioned a full-body integration. No warnings about a symbiotic relationship that would turn a scientist into a host. The mutation was complete. Her body now produced the toxin itself. It seeped from her pores, coated her skin, laced her breath. She was a walking synthesis of human and plant, a biological weapon she never meant to create. Cole listened. He didn't interrupt. He watched her hands as she spoke, the way they trembled even when she held them still. He processed the information like he would a battlefield report. He noted the cause, the effect, the operational parameters of her condition. Her sweat was lethal. Her tears were lethal. Any point of contact meant instant neural shutdown for any living thing that touched her. She was a contagion contained within a single body, a plague with no cure and only one carrier. He filed the name away. Scorpion's tear, it fit. The local name held more truth than all the company's scientific bulletins. They had sent her to harvest a miracle and instead created a monster. A single botanical research experiment conducted by the book had gone so wrong it redefined the meaning of contamination. She was no longer a researcher. She was the experiment itself, a living testament to a corporate oversight that cost her everything. Cole stored each detail: the name of the flower, the lack of warnings, the physiological changes. He wasn't looking for empathy. He was gathering intelligence. In his world, understanding a weapon was the first step to surviving it. Or using it. Her story was a tactical briefing, and he was memorizing every word. He saw the pattern, a company asset, a flawed process, a catastrophic outcome. He had seen that pattern before on other worlds with other kinds of weapons. The story was always the same. Only the collateral damage changed. Cole reached into his pack. He pulled out a coil of high-tensile cord. It was thin, strong, the kind used for climbing or securing heavy loads. He needed to move, and he needed her to move with him. He also needed to not die. The math was simple. He had to keep her close enough to protect, far enough to survive. He approached her slowly. She saw the rope in his hands and flinched back. Her body went rigid. He stopped. He understood the reaction. To her, it looked like a restraint. A chain for a monster. He didn't explain. He just held the rope, letting her see it was just cord. Nothing more. He tied one end around his own waist, cinching the knot tight against his hip. He tossed the other end toward her. It landed in the sand a few feet from her boots. A clear, deliberate distance. An offering, not a command. This was not a leash. It was a measured safety margin. A fixed distance of exactly 12 feet. Enough space that a sudden stumble wouldn't bring them into contact. Enough length to share weight on a steep climb or a tricky descent. It was a tool, a parameter for survival. The rope became their tether. It stretched taut between them as they walked. It cut a thin line through the crimson sand, a visible mark of their connection. On a steep dune, he would plant his feet and brace, the cord going tight as she climbed behind him. On a rock face, he would scale a section, then use the rope to guide her up, feeling her movements through the tension in the line. It allowed for silent communication. A sharp tug from him meant stop. A series of short pulls meant danger ahead. A steady, gentle tension meant keep moving, I'm right here. It was a physical link in a situation where touch was impossible. It was their shared lifeline. Alina saw it as a symbol of her isolation. The 12 feet of woven fiber was a constant, humiliating reminder. It was the exact measure of the gap between her and the rest of the living world. Every time the cord went slack, she felt the emptiness. Every time it pulled tight, she was reminded of why it was necessary. She was a thing to be managed at a safe distance. Cole saw it as a practical solution to an impossible problem. How do you cross a lethal desert with a person who is herself a lethal hazard? You don't try to fight the problem. You work within its limits. You establish a protocol. You use a rope. The cord was a boundary, but it was also a bridge. It was the only way two survivors could navigate a world that wanted them dead, when one of them carried death in her skin. It was the geometry of their new reality, drawn in a single unbroken line across the sand. He had dealt with worse constraints. This one was clean. This one had a simple physical answer. The heat of the twin suns pressed down. They walked in the rhythm their rope allowed, a slow, measured pace across the endless red. Alina asked him why he stayed on a world like this, a world of dust and predators and little else. He was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the crunch of their boots on the sand. He said a name. Warren. He said it like a man tasting water he knew was bad. Warren leads the marauders, he told her. The ones who hunt crash sites. They don't come for survivors. They come for scrap, for tech, for anything they can strip and sell. They are vultures with rifles and vehicles. They are the real predators out here. He knew Warren. They served together once. A long time ago on a planet called Araxis. It was a corporate security contract. A simple pacification job in a disputed mining region. Or it was supposed to be simple. It wasn't. There was a village. The intel was wrong. The orders were wrong. It wasn't a rebel stronghold. It was just people, farmers, families. Warren gave the order to clear the area. Cole was there. He saw what clearing meant. It wasn't a firefight. It was a massacre. Civilians, not combatants. Men, women. It was over in minutes. The company sent in cleanup crews. They wrote their reports. They buried the evidence with the bodies. They needed a fall guy, someone who wouldn't play along. They gave Cole a dishonorable discharge. They cut him loose. They left him with the memory of that day, and a black mark on his record that meant no legitimate outfit would ever hire him again. Warren played the game. He gave the testimony they wanted. He got a promotion. Then he left the company and built his own private army. He took the corporate playbook and made it his own. Now he operates on the fringe, scavenging dead worlds like Hesperus for profit. He answers to no one. Alina listened. She heard the flat tone in his voice, the way he stated facts without emotion. She looked at the man walking 12 feet ahead of her. The rope between them was a taut line. She saw the set of his shoulders, the way he scanned the horizon without ever seeming to relax. She understood his exile then. It wasn't a choice. It was a punishment for refusing to be a monster. He was cast out for having a line he wouldn't cross. She was cast out for being a monster she never chose to become. Their situations were mirrors. Both of them were discarded by the same machine, left to die in the sand for different crimes. One for refusing an order, one for being the result of one. The connection was a dark, thin thread, but it was there. It bound them as surely as the rope. Alina stopped walking. She pointed toward a twisted gray-barked tree growing from a crack in a rock face. Its roots dug deep into the stone. "See the discoloration on the lower trunk?" she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. A scientist's voice even now. "That's iron oxide. This species pulls trace metals directly from the substrate. It uses the compounds to reinforce its structure against the wind. Its cellular structure is part plant, part mineral." Her mind still worked. Despite the fear, despite the curse, she saw the world through a lens of data and observation. It was her anchor. She could still read the landscape, not just as a threat, but as a system. She explained that Hesperus defied every category from an Earth-based field guide. The life here followed a different set of rules. Fungal colonies spread for miles under the sand. They didn't communicate through chemical signals. They used pulses of electrical current, a silent, instantaneous network that could alert an entire plane to a single footstep. The sandwolves were another anomaly. They hunted in perfect, soundless coordination. No howls to signal the pack. They used the electrical grid of the fungi. A disturbance registered in the network, and the wolves reacted as a single organism. They were predators wired into the planet's nervous system. Even the geology was alive. Certain porous rocks could shift their internal structure over hours or days. They would slowly reconfigure to capture morning dew or trap small burrowing animals. The ground itself was a patient hunter. Cole listened. He filed each piece of information away. He was a tactician. Her knowledge became his intelligence. She showed him how to find a seep spring by the type of lichen growing near it. She pointed out the barely visible depressions in the sand that indicated a predatory plant's trap. He used her insights to plot their course, to find water, to avoid the things that wanted to eat them. She described ecosystems that should not exist. Animals that photosynthesized, plants that hunted, a food web built on conduction and silent signals instead of sound and scent. It was a world of biological contradictions, a place where the rules of life had been rewritten by extreme pressure and isolation. He noticed something else. The native life gave them a wide berth. A pack of sandwolves would track them for miles, but they never closed the final 100 yards. A large scavenger bird would circle high above, but it never dove. The rock-dwelling lizards would scatter long before they got near. The reason was her. The creatures of Hesperus, so finely tuned to the electrical and chemical signals of their world, sensed the toxin in her body. They registered it as a catastrophic anomaly. A wrongness in the system. A blight. It was a signal so potent, so alien to their environment, that it triggered a primal avoidance instinct. The planet's most efficient predators, the things he had learned to fear, were afraid of her. They sensed the death she carried and instinctively turned away. Her curse created an invisible barrier, a circle of safety enforced by the terror of every living thing that sensed it. The desert's most adapted creatures feared the woman in their midst more than they feared anything else on their world. The sound began as the smaller sun dipped below the dunes. It was not a single howl but a chorus, a low humming vibration that seemed to come from the sand itself. It was the sound the sandwolves used to disorient prey, to make the world seem alive with threat. Shadows detached themselves from the deeper darkness of the rock formations. They moved with a fluid, silent grace, circling the small patch of flat ground Cole had chosen for the night. Cole stood up slowly. His eyes swept the perimeter. He counted 6 sets of eyes catching the last of the fading light. They glowed like chips of amber ice. Their camp was a bad defensive position. No high ground. No choke points. Just open sand and their 2 packs. It was a place to rest, not a place to make a stand. He did not panic. Panic was a luxury that got you killed. He planted his combat knife upright in the sand next to his right boot. The handle was within easy reach. He strung his bow. The composite limbs made a low creak as he pulled the string taut. He checked the tension by feel. It was good. He had 3 arrows left. He would need to make them count. Alina crouched low. She made herself as small as possible behind him. She was a liability, a spectator. Her hands were empty. Her only weapon was a curse she could not control without killing the one person who stood between her and the wolves. She was useless, and the knowledge was a cold stone in her gut. She watched the circle of shadows tighten. Cole's hand went to the rope at his waist. He worked quickly. He untied the end that was secured to his pack. He kept his movements smooth, deliberate. He tied a quick-release knot around a bulky, empty water canister from his supplies. It wasn't much, but it had weight. It would make a sound. He didn't look at the wolves. He tracked them by sound and peripheral vision. He waited for the right moment. One of the wolves on the left flank took a testing step forward. Cole swung the rope in a short, sharp arc and let the weighted end fly. It landed 20 feet to the left with a solid thump and a rattle of metal. The pack reacted as one. Their attention snapped toward the sudden noise and movement. 3 of the wolves lunged for the decoy. It was a brief distraction. 3 seconds, maybe 4. It was all he needed. In those 3 seconds, Cole moved. He was already turning, the bow coming up. He did not aim for center mass. A sandwolf's hide was thick, its ribs a dense protective cage. He aimed for the throat. The first arrow took the nearest wolf in the soft space under its jaw. It made a choked, gurgling sound and collapsed. The second arrow was already knocked and flying. It found the throat of a second wolf that was turning back from the decoy. The arrow punched through and the creature went down without a sound. The remaining wolves hesitated. The silent, precise violence broke their coordinated advance. They backed away a few steps, their low humming faltering. The circle was broken. The immediate threat was over. Cole stood there, bow still half raised. He breathed slowly. His heart rate was elevated but controlled. He had not won a fight. He had managed a threat. He had used misdirection, environment, and limited resources to create an advantage. He survived through applied tactics, not through strength or fury. Alina watched him lower the bow. She saw the 2 dead wolves lying in the sand. She saw the calm on his face. This was not the blind rage of a monster or the desperate flailing of a victim. This was calculation. This was control. Violence in his hands was a precise instrument. It was a terrible thing, but it was also a skill. For the first time, she saw it not as a necessarily evil, but as a tool that could be aimed. It was a chilling realization and a necessary one. Cole wiped the sandwolf's blood from his knife. The blade gleamed in the dim light. He slid it back into its sheath. The fight was over. The immediate threat was gone. The silence that followed was heavier than the howling had been. He turned his head and looked at Alina. He did not look at her with fear or pity. He looked at her with assessment. His eyes measured her. He was calculating her potential. "Your touch could clear a path," he said. His voice was flat. It was a statement of fact. A tactical observation. He wasn't suggesting. He was outlining a possibility. Her curse was a variable in his survival equation. He was simply factoring it in. She recoiled from the words as if he'd struck her. She took a half step back, the rope between them going momentarily slack. Her face paled. "No," she said. The word was sharp, final. "I won't be a weapon." Not like Warren. Not like them. She saw the path he was starting to draw. It was a road that led to a place she refused to go. She had spent every moment since the crash hating what she had become. The idea of embracing it, of using it, was a deeper violation than the curse itself. He didn't flinch. He held her gaze. "Survival out here isn't about morals," he said. "It's about options. It's about using what you have." He gestured toward the empty desert, a sweeping motion that took in the entire hostile world. "The sand doesn't care about your principles. The wolves don't care. Warren won't care. You have an asset. A powerful one. Not using it is a choice. It's a luxury. Losing your humanity isn't survival." Her voice rose, edged with a desperation he hadn't heard before. "It's just a slower way to die. If I become that, if I let myself be turned into a thing that kills on command, then the scorpion's tear didn't poison my body. It poisoned me. Warren kills for profit. You want me to kill for convenience. What's the difference?" This was the core of it, the fundamental rift between them. He saw a problem that needed a solution. She saw a soul that needed saving. He needed a tool, a means to an end, a way to neutralize threats and secure their passage. She needed a cure, a way back to the person she was before, a way to touch another living thing without destroying it. Her curse was the center of both their needs, but it pulled them in opposite directions. He saw its potential as their greatest asset, a deterrent, a weapon of absolute last resort, a way to make their enemies vanish without a shot fired. It was the one thing they had that Warren's men could not fight, could not anticipate, could not counter with bullets or blades. It was the ultimate asymmetric advantage. She saw it only as a prison, a disease to be cured. To use it would be to accept the prison walls to decorate her cell. It would mean the company's mistake had won. It had not just changed her body. It had rewritten her purpose. The conversation ended there. It didn't conclude. It simply hung in the air between them, unresolved and sharp like the smell of ozone after a lightning strike. He had laid out his logic. She had stated her boundary. Neither had budged. The tension wasn't anger. It was the friction of two different worlds colliding, two different definitions of what it meant to stay alive. The rope that connected them felt thinner than ever. A dust cloud rose on the horizon. It was not a storm. It moved too fast, too direct. The low rumble of engines carried across the open ground. Cole's hand shot out. He grabbed Alina's arm just above the glove line, his grip firm through the fabric. He yanked her sideways into a narrow fissure in the canyon wall. The rock pressed in on both sides. It was a tight fit. They stood in shadow, breathing hard. A voice cut through the engine noise. It was amplified, projected from a vehicle's speaker. The tone was calm, almost friendly. It was Warren's voice. "I know you're in there, Cole. No need for this to get messy. Just step out. Bring the researcher with you. You have my word for safe passage." The words were smooth, practiced. They offered a deal that sounded reasonable. They were a lie, Warren knew. He knew about Alina. He knew what she was. He wasn't here for salvage. He wasn't here for revenge. He wanted her gift. He saw the curse not as a disease but as an asset, a tool for his operations, a silent, untraceable weapon that could remove obstacles without a fight. He wanted to recruit her, to turn her into his personal instrument of death. The offer of safe passage was the hook. The threat was implied. They heard the whoosh first, then the crackle. Two projectiles arced over the canyon walls. They landed at either end of the narrow passage. They weren't explosives. They were incendiary devices, firebombs. The flames caught on dry brush and spread quickly. Thick black smoke began to pour from both ends of the canyon. It was a calculated move, a siege tactic. The smoke rolled into the fissure. It was choking, acrid. It burned the eyes and the lungs. Cole's vision blurred. His eyes watered, trying to clear the sting. He coughed into his sleeve. Alina pressed herself harder against the rock. Her fear was a physical presence in the tight space. It was in her short, panicked breaths, in the white-knuckled grip she had on her own arms. She was trapped between solid rock and a man who saw her as a commodity. Warren's voice came again, calm amid the crackle of the fires. "It doesn't have to end this way. We can all walk out of here. Just bring her to me." The smoke thickened. It filled the air, reducing visibility to a few feet. The heat from the fires began to bake the canyon walls. The oxygen grew thin. The noose was tightening. They were in a box, and Warren was methodically closing the lid. He was not trying to kill them. That was the most dangerous part. He was applying pressure. He was creating a deadly environment to force a surrender. He wanted them alive. He wanted her functional. He was hurting them. The fires blocked escape. The smoke disoriented and weakened. The verbal offers provided a seemingly safe way out. It was a complete, ruthless strategy. He had assessed the terrain, identified his objective, and deployed his resources with cold precision. This was not a raid. It was an extraction. And they were the assets he had come to collect. The marauders outside were just the force to secure the package. Warren's real weapon was the canyon itself, and he had just turned it into a trap. Warren's voice cut through the smoke. It was calm. It was patient. It was a predator's voice. "You have 1 hour." Then the fires spread. "Your choice is simple. Join me, or burn." The ultimatum hung in the choking air. It was not a negotiation. It was a countdown. The canyon was a furnace waiting to be lit. Alina pressed her forehead against the cool rock. Her voice was a raw whisper meant only for Cole. "I can't. I'd rather die here than let him use me." I won't be his weapon. Her words were a final line drawn in the sand, a refusal to surrender her last shred of self. She would perish in the fire before she agreed to become Warren's tool. Cole didn't look at her. His eyes were busy. He studied the narrow rock walls of their fissure. He measured the angle of the fading light. He listened to the crackle of the distant flames. His mind was a map of angles and options. He was running out of both. Every path led to a dead end. Every choice was a bad one. Except one, he had a gambit. A final terrible risk. It was a move born of desperation, a play that broke every rule of engagement. It didn't involve his knife or his bow. It didn't rely on strength or speed. It hinged entirely on her touch. On the one thing she refused to use, he turned to her. The smoke made his eyes water. He spoke quietly, his words clear and direct. He laid out the plan. It was simple, brutally simple. He would draw Warren in. He would get him close. He would need her to do the one thing she had sworn never to do. She shook her head. A sharp, jerky motion. No, I said no. We find another way. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. The refusal was instant, absolute. There is no other way, he said. His voice was flat. It held no anger, no plea. It was a statement of tactical fact. The fires are the timer. His men are the luck. This is the only key we have. You are the only key we have. He let the words sit in the smoky air. He watched her face, saw the conflict there. The terror of the choice. He didn't ask her to be a weapon. He asked her to be a shield. This isn't about losing yourself, he said. It's about saving us. It's about using what you are to protect who you are. He wants to own your curse. Use it to prove he never can. He was not appealing to her fear. He was appealing to her will to survive on her own terms, to defy Warren by using the very thing he wanted to steal, to turn his greed against him. He was asking her to trust him with the most dangerous part of herself. He was asking her to make a choice, not submit to one. This was not Warren's coercion. This was a partnership, a terrible, necessary alliance. He was not commanding her. He was showing her the only path through the fire. He was convincing her that this act, this one horrific act, was not a surrender to the curse. It was a reclamation of control. It was how they saved themselves without becoming the monsters they fought. The risk was absolute. The trust had to be too. Cole stepped out from the fissure. His hands were raised to his shoulders, palms open. He walked slowly into the open space between the rock walls. The smoke swirled around his boots. Warren stood 30 feet away, flanked by 2 of his men. He held a heavy pistol, aimed low at Cole's center mass. A slow, confident smile spread across Warren's face. The smile of a man who believed he had already won. He saw a lone, unarmed man giving up. He did not see the plan. Cole stopped walking. He kept his voice level, carrying clearly through the crackle of the distant fires. She's not a weapon. The words were simple, a statement of fact. Then he paused. He let the silence stretch for a beat. But I am. He was not boasting. He was redefining the situation. He was changing the bargaining chip from the woman in the rocks to the man in front of the gun. He was making himself the prize. Warren's smile didn't fade. It widened. He took the bait. He saw a former soldier, dishonorably discharged, offering his services. He saw a pragmatic choice, a useful tool switching sides. Warren took a step forward. Then another. He lowered his pistol slightly. The threat was diminishing. The negotiation was beginning. He closed the distance to 15 feet. 10. He was confident. He was in control. Cole did not look back at the fissure. He spoke 2 words. They were quiet but clear. A command. A request. A culmination of every risk they had taken. Touch me. Elena stepped from the shadow. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror and resolve. She moved quickly. Cole reached back without looking. His hand found hers. He gripped her gloved wrist. He pulled her arm forward. He pressed her bare palm flat against the hard plating of his own armored chest. The contact was firm, deliberate. Nothing happened. The neurotoxin on her skin met only composite armor and sealed environmental suit material. There was no absorption, no transfer. The suit was a barrier. It was a calculated part of the plan. He had used his gear as a shield. He had proven a point. The touch itself was not the weapon. The delivery was. Warren watched the strange pantomime. He saw no effect. He saw a man grab a woman's hand and place it on his chest. He saw desperation, a failed trick. His confidence solidified into arrogance. He took the final 2 steps forward. He was within arm's reach now. He reached out with his free hand. He grabbed Cole's shoulder. A firm, patronizing grip. A gesture of ownership. A commander taking charge of a new asset. Enough theatrics, Cole, it's over. The motion brought Warren's neck into range. His collar was open. His skin was exposed. The vulnerable hollow just below his jaw was right there. Cole didn't move. He held Warren's gaze. Alina's hand was still pinned against his chest by his own grip. With a tiny shift of his fingers, he released her wrist. Her hand sprang back. A reflexive movement born of a lifetime of avoiding contact. Her bare fingertips, still charged with the potent secretion of the scorpion's tear, brushed against the side of Warren's neck. The effect was instant. There was no sound, no cry. Warren's eyes lost their focus. The smug certainty vanished, replaced by a blank, fading surprise. His grip on Cole's shoulder slackened. His fingers loosened. The heavy pistol fell from his other hand and thudded into the sand. He made a small choke noise in the back of his throat. A final failed attempt to draw breath. His legs gave way. He dropped to his knees, then slumped onto his side. His body twitched once, a brief neural spasm, and then was still. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. From contact to death, silent, efficient, absolute. The neurotoxin had done its work. It had overloaded his nervous system and shut it down. There was no blood. No visible wound. Just a man ended by a single accidental touch. The weapon Warren had come to acquire had just been used against him. The gamble had worked. The cost was just beginning to register on Alina's face. Warren stumbled. His eyes went wide. He made a small choked sound. His hands came up to his throat. He was not screaming. He was fighting for a single breath that would not come. His face lost all expression. The certainty, the arrogance, the command had all drained away. He was just a man whose body was shutting down. His men watched. They were frozen. They saw their leader grab his own neck. They saw him struggle. They saw no wound. There was no blood. No bullet hole. No mark of any kind. He just dropped. His knees hit the sand. Then he fell onto his side. His body gave one final small twitch. Then it was still. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the crackle of the fires at the canyon ends. A man had died from a single accidental touch. There was no logic to it. No reason a hardened marauder could understand. Alina stood there. Her hand was still partly raised. She stared at Warren's body. Her face was blank with pure horror. She had done this. She had made the choice. She had used the curse. She had become the weapon she swore she would never be. The victory felt like ash in her mouth. She had saved them. She had also confirmed her own deepest fear. The marauders took a step back. Then another. They were not looking at Cole. They were not looking at their fallen leader. They were looking at her. Their eyes were wide with a different kind of fear. This was not the fear of a gun or a knife. This was the fear of something unknown, something that defied all the rules of their violent world. A man could be shot. A man could be stabbed. A man could not just drop dead from a brush of fingers. It made no sense. Their minds searched for an explanation and found only superstition. One of them muttered the word. It was low, almost swallowed by the sound of the fire. Demon! The word hung in the smoky air. Another man heard it. He repeated it. A third man backed away faster, his rifle held loosely, pointing at the ground. The label spread through them like a current. It was a simple, terrifying answer to an impossible question. They were not facing a woman. They were facing a demon, a thing of myth and nightmare, a being that killed with a touch. The group's cohesion shattered. The leadership vacuum was instant and total. With Warren gone, there was no one to give orders, no one to rally them, no one to force them to stand and fight against an enemy they could not comprehend. Their discipline broke. The fear was contagious. It spread faster than any command ever could. They were not soldiers retreating. They were men fleeing a supernatural threat. They turned. They did not run in formation. They did not cover each other. They broke. They scrambled over rocks. They abandoned their positions. They left their heavy weapons where they stood. They left their vehicles running. They left their leader's body in the sand. Their only objective was distance. They needed to get away from the canyon. away from the woman who killed with a touch, away from the demon. Their flight was not tactical. It was pure panic. The psychological impact of witnessing their leader's inexplicable death triggered a deep primal instinct for self-preservation. The group's structure, built on fear of Warren, disintegrated the moment he fell. Without a clear chain of command, there was no one to stop the surge of terror, no one to rationalize what they had seen. They prioritized individual survival over any remaining mission objective. They ran because they could not fight what they did not understand. They ran because the word demon was easier to accept than the truth. They scattered into the desert, leaving only dust and silence behind them. The silence came back. It was heavier than before. It was a physical weight. Cole leaned against the rough canyon wall. He let out a long, slow breath. The adrenaline that had been holding him up drained away. It left a cold emptiness in its place. Then the pain hit. A sharp, deep ache in his right side. He looked down. A dark, wet stain was spreading through the fabric of his suit. It wasn't sandwolf blood. It was his. During the chaos, something had found him. A stray bullet from a panicked marauder's rifle, or a sharp edge of rock when he'd pulled Alina into the fissure. It didn't matter now. The result was the same. A gash deep and serious. The blood flowed steadily. It was not a pulsing arterial bleed, but it was a leak that wouldn't stop on its own. His face lost its color. His skin felt cold and clammy under the suit. Alina saw the blood. Her hands came up, a reflexive movement to help. Then they stopped. They hung in the air, useless. She could not get close. She could not apply pressure. She could not even hand him a bandage. The one thing she needed to do, the most basic act of aid, was impossible. The curse was a wall between them. Her face showed the agony of it. The frustration. The helplessness. Cole did not complain. He did not curse his luck. He assessed the problem. A bleeding wound. Limited mobility. A long distance to cover. He had to stop the bleeding. Now. His movements were slow, deliberate. He gritted his teeth against the pain. He unbuckled his chest plate. He peeled back the blood-soaked layers of his undersuit. The wound was an angry, dark line just above his hip. It was clean but deep. He had a field kit. It was small, basic. He took out a compressed gauze pad. He tore the wrapper with his teeth. He pressed the pad hard against the wound. A hiss of pain escaped his clenched jaw. He held it there with one hand. With the other, he fumbled for a roll of adhesive bandage. He managed to wrap it around his torso, pulling it tight. The binding was crude, but it was pressure. It was a temporary fix. He knew it wouldn't hold for long. He looked up at Alina. His breathing was shallow. "Listen," he said. His voice was strained but clear. "My cabin. It's northwest of here. Coordinates are 74.3 by 18.9. Remember that. It's a low structure. Welded metal and local rock. It's got supplies. It's defensible." He was giving her a way out, a destination. Then he gave her a name. Dr. Mira Kaval. She might be at the settlement past the ridge. Find her. Tell her I sent you. Tell her. Tell her about the flower. She'll understand. She might be the only one who can. He was handing over the mission. He was trusting her with their only hope. The shocking moment was not the injury. It was the realization that bloomed in the silence after he spoke. Her curse. The thing that isolated her, that horrified her, had just saved his life. It had been their shield. He had used the very thing that made her a monster to defeat a monster. He had turned her greatest weakness into their only strength. He had not asked her to become a weapon for vengeance. He had asked her to become a shield for survival. And it had worked. The marauders were gone. Warren was dead. They were alive. The curse had not just ended a life. It had saved two. The tool itself was neutral. Its purpose was defined by the hand that held it and the will that guided it. For the first time, the curse was not just a sentence. It was a part of the solution. He had proven that even a plague could be a protection, if you were clever enough and brave enough to use it that way. They moved on. Each step was an effort for Cole. He favored his right side. The bleeding had slowed, but the pain was a constant grinding presence. He spoke as they walked. His voice was low, measured. He told her about Mira Kaval. He needed to keep his mind off the pain. She needed to know who they were looking for. She was a company scientist, he said. Like you. She worked in the xenobotany division. She was smart. One of the best. But she had a problem with the company's methods. She saw things, research that was more about profit than discovery, data that was hidden, lies that were told to the investors and the oversight boards. She saw the same patterns Alina had seen, but she did something about it. She found out the company was violating its own ethical protocols. They were testing unstable compounds on local flora without proper containment. They were ignoring the potential side effects. They were pushing for results, for patents, for a return on their investment. They didn't care about the long-term consequences. They didn't care about the life on this world, or the lives of their own researchers. Mira tried to raise her concerns through the proper channels. She was ignored. She was told to focus on her work. She was warned to drop it, so she made a choice. She defected. She took her research, her data logs, everything she had on the company's wrongdoings, and she gave it to the Verdani, the local people, the ones the company was supposedly here to help. She gave them the truth. Now she lives in one of their settlements. She works with them. She studies the native biology, but she does it their way, slowly, respectfully. She tries to fix the mistakes the company made. She looks for ways to heal the damage, not exploit it. She might be the only person off-world who understands the scorpion's tear on a cellular level. She might know what it did to you. She might know how to undo it. Alina listened. Her own steps felt lighter. The weight on her shoulders shifted. This was not just a name. It was a possibility, a real tangible chance. It was not just about surviving the next day. It was about having a day after that, a future. It was a path back to a life where she could touch another living thing. It was a path away from the weapon Warren wanted her to be. For the first time since the crash, she felt a thin, fragile sliver of hope. It was a dangerous feeling. It could be broken so easily. But it was there. Mira Kaval was the antithesis of Warren. Warren saw people and planets as resources to be consumed. He took what he wanted and left ruin behind. Mira saw problems and tried to solve them. She gave knowledge away instead of hoarding it. She helped. In a universe that had discarded both of them, she represented a different way, a way that didn't end in dust and blood. She was not a scavenger. She was a healer. And she might be the only person who could understand the poison in Alina's veins well enough to find an antidote. She was the single point of light in a very dark sky, the only hope for reversing a condition that science had created and then abandoned. His steps were slow. They dragged in the sand. Each one cost him. The bandage on his side was a dull, persistent throb. But his voice was firm. It cut through the pain. That curse saved us both today, he said. He didn't look at her. He watched the path ahead. He stated it as a fact, a tactical after-action report. The curse was a variable. It had been deployed. The result was favorable. Alina shook her head. It's still a curse, she said. Her voice was tight. It's a disease. It's a mistake written into my cells. Using it doesn't make it right. It just makes me complicit. She saw the dead marauder in her mind. She felt the ghost of the touch on her fingertips. The horror was fresh. It was a stain she couldn't wash off. She had crossed a line. She had become the monster she feared. He stopped walking. He turned to face her. The movement was stiff. On Hesperus, he said, everything is a tool. Nothing is good. Nothing is evil, it just is. A knife can cut a man's throat. That same knife can skin a meal. The knife doesn't care. The difference is the hand that holds it. The difference is the choice. He held up his own knife. The blade caught the light. It was a simple piece of shaped metal. It held no intent of its own. Your touch is the same, he continued. His eyes held hers. It can destroy. It can also protect. You used it to protect. You used it to create a path where there was none. You made a choice. You chose our survival over his. That is the only difference that matters out here. The tool is neutral. The choice is what defines it. He was not asking her to feel good about it. He was asking her to see it clearly, to see the power of her own will. She was quiet. She looked at her hands. They looked the same as they always had. But they were not. They were a weapon she had finally fired. He was right. She had chosen. In that canyon, surrounded by fire and smoke, she had made a decision. She had taken the thing that isolated her and used it to save the one person who refused to be isolated from her. She had controlled its use. She had aimed it. The curse had not acted on its own. She had acted. The final revelation was not about the nature of the curse. It was about the nature of power. It was not a gift. It was not a curse. It was a part of her. Like her intelligence, like her fear. It was a fact of her existence. The company's experiment had created it. Her body housed it. But her mind, her will, her choice, that was what controlled it. She was not a victim of her condition. She was the commander of it. The power to destroy was also the power to preserve. The choice to use it for protection did not erase its danger. It simply gave that danger a purpose. It integrated the monstrous into the moral. It made her whole. The thing she hated most about herself had just become the thing that made her survival possible. It was not a contradiction. It was a completion. She was the scientist and the specimen, the weapon and the hand that held it. The division between curse and gift vanished. There was only what was and what she decided to do with it. The control was everything. The low structure appeared on the ridgeline. It was a dark shape against the fading sky, a cabin made of welded metal sheets and fitted local rock. It looked like it had grown from the stone itself. Cole's sanctuary, built by his own hands over a long period. It was not a home. It was a fortress, a place to rest and regroup, a testament to one man's will to survive alone. The distance to it felt impossible. The ridge looked 1,000 miles away. The sand seemed to pull at Cole's boots. Each step was a separate, painful decision. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. The wound in his side was a fire that would not go out. He was fading. The blood loss was a steady drain on his strength. The cabin was a finish line he might not cross. He leaned more heavily on the rope between them. It was not a conscious choice. His body just gave way. The tension on the line changed. It was no longer a measured distance. It was a lifeline. Alina felt the new weight. She felt the drag. She stopped. She looked back. She saw the strain on his face. The pale skin. The sweat on his brow. The rope was pulling taut, and it was her turn to hold it. She took the weight. She planted her feet. She adjusted her stance. She did not pull him. She became an anchor. She let him lean. She became his support. Then she began to guide him. She looked ahead. She searched the ground. She found the firmest path. She avoided the loose sand that would suck at his boots. She steered them around rocks and hidden dips. She used the knowledge he had taught her. She read the landscape now. She saw it as a series of problems and solutions. The student became the guide. The one who needed protection became the protector. Her eyes scanned ahead for threats for the safest route. She moved with a new confidence, a purpose born of necessity. She was not just following. She was leading. She was making the choices now. The dynamic between them shifted on the sand. It was a quiet, unspoken change. It was earned. The rope was no longer just a barrier. It was no longer a 12-foot reminder of her isolation. It was a connection, a shared burden, a physical expression of their partnership. It was the thing that kept him on his feet. It was the thing that allowed her to help without touch. It was the one piece of gear that had adapted to their new reality. It had been a tether. Now it was a bond. They were a team, forged in the heat of the canyon, bound by shared trial and blood. They had faced death together. They had used her curse as a shield. They had survived because of each other, not in spite of each other. The journey had broken them down and rebuilt them into something new, something stronger. The trust was no longer a calculation. It was a fact. The cabin represented not an end but a brief respite. It was a waypoint, a place to stop the bleeding, a place to gather supplies, a place to rest for a single night. It was not safety. It was not a conclusion. It was a moment of quiet in the storm, a chance to breathe before the next longer journey began. The real destination, the settlement, lay somewhere beyond that ridge. The cabin was just the next step, a hard-won patch of ground where they could stop running if only for a few hours. Past the cabin, there is a larger goal. Cole's map shows a Verdani outpost beyond the ridge. It is not a city. It is a collection of low structures built for survival in a harsh place. The people there work together. They have a med bay. It is a place that values life, not just endurance. It represents the next step, the real destination. Getting there means crossing open ground. The land between the cabin and the settlement is exposed. There are no canyons for cover, no rock formations to hide behind. It is a flat, vast stretch of sand and hard-packed earth. It offers no protection. Anyone watching from a distance would see them coming from miles away. It is the most dangerous part of the journey yet, Warren's men might still be out there. They broke and ran, but they did not vanish. They are scattered. They are likely regrouping. They are wounded, leaderless, and afraid. That makes them more dangerous, not less. A cornered animal is unpredictable. A man who has lost everything has nothing left to lose. They could be hiding. They could be waiting. They could be tracking them right now. But Mira is there, in the settlement. She is the reason to take the risk. She is not just a name anymore. She is a real person in a real place. She represents a chance, a hope for a cure, a way to undo the damage the company caused. She is the sole objective. The mission has a clear target now. It is not just about running from danger. It is about running toward something. Alina must go, with or without Cole. The wound in his side is a serious problem. He is losing strength. He might not make the trip. He knows this. He has already accepted it. His priority is no longer his own survival. It is hers. He will get her to the cabin. He will give her the supplies she needs. Then he will make sure she continues. He will ensure she reaches the settlement and finds Mira. His mission has shifted. It began as a simple act of not running away. Then it became a partnership of necessity, a shared burden for survival. Now it is something else. It is a commitment to her safety above his own. His purpose is no longer solitude. It is protection. He has found a reason to care about someone else's future. It is a change he did not look for, but one he will not abandon. The journey continues, but the purpose is clear. Every step from the cabin will be toward the settlement. Every decision will be weighed against that goal. The open ground is a gauntlet. The scattered marauders are a threat. But the reason for moving forward is no longer abstract. It has a location on a map. It has a face and a name. Survival now has a name and a future. It is not just about the next hour, the next day. It is about a life after the desert, a chance to be more than just a survivor, a chance to be a person again. The settlement is more than buildings. It is a possibility. It is the only path that leads away from the constant threat of death. It is where the curse might end and a new life might begin. The danger is real, but the goal is worth the risk. They have come too far to stop now. The cabin is a pause. The settlement is the destination. They reached the door as the smaller sun dipped below the horizon. The last light painted the metal doorframe a dull orange. Cole slumped against it. The strength left his legs. He braced himself with one hand on the cool metal. His breathing was shallow and ragged. The exhaustion was a weight he could no longer carry. The wound on his side was a constant, throbbing reminder of the canyon. He was at the edge of his endurance. Alina stood a few feet away. The rope between them was slack. She watched him lean against the cabin. She saw the pain on his face. She saw the way he held his side. Her hands felt empty. She wanted to help him inside. She wanted to offer an arm to lean on. She wanted to open the door for him. But every helpful instinct required touch. Every gesture of aid was a potential death sentence. The space between them felt vast. It was a distance measured in more than feet. The rope still hung between them. It was a limp, woven line in the sand. It had been their tether for days, their measured safety margin, their only point of contact in a world where contact meant death. It was a symbol of her isolation and his practicality. It was the thing that had kept them alive and reminded her she was alone. Cole's hand moved to his waist. His fingers were clumsy with fatigue. He found the knot he had tied days ago at the crash site. He worked it loose. It was not a quick or easy task. The fibers were tight from tension and dust. He picked at it until it gave way. The rope fell from his waist. It coiled on the ground at his boots. It was just a length of cord again. Useless. The action was simple. It was a gesture of trust, not just practicality. He was removing the last physical barrier between them by choice. He was saying he did not need it anymore. He was saying he trusted her control. He trusted her judgment. He trusted her not to accidentally kill him. It was a faith placed in her hands. It was a bigger risk than any he had taken with the Sandwolves or Warren. She understood the weight of the action. She looked from the rope on the ground to his face. He did not look at her. He was focused on staying upright, but the message was clear. He had trusted her curse in the canyon. He had asked her to use it. He had gambled his life on her ability to control the uncontrollable. Now he was trusting her presence. He was stepping over the line they had both drawn in the sand. She had trusted his guidance across the desert. She had followed his lead through predators and marauders, She had believed in his plan when it seemed like madness. She had placed her life in his hands repeatedly. This was his answer to that trust. He was giving it back to her. He was showing her that the trust went both ways. It was not a one-way transaction. It was a partnership. Their alliance was no longer just about necessity. It was not a bond forced upon them by circumstance and survival. It was a choice. It was a decision made again and again with every step they took together. It was him choosing to untie the rope. It was her choosing to see the trust in the gesture. It was them choosing to continue toward the settlement together. The connection was no longer a chain. It was a thread they both held. It was a choice reaffirmed with every difficult step, every shared look, every silent moment of understanding in the harsh light of the desert. The rope was gone. What remained was stronger. It was a bond forged in crisis and hardened by shared trust. It was the one thing the desert could not break. The cabin door sighed shut behind them, blocking out the twin sun's final light. The air inside was still and cool. Dust motes drifted in the single shaft of amber light from a high window. Cole leaned heavily on a metal table welded to the wall. He was breathing slow, deliberate breaths. The wound in his side was a low drumbeat of pain. His hand moved. He pointed to the far wall. A large map was tacked there. It was a topographical survey of the region, marked and annotated by hand. A single red line snaked across the paper. The route to the settlement was a blood-colored scar on the map. It started at the cabin's location. It did not take the easy paths. It cut through narrow, winding canyons where rockfalls were common, and visibility was zero. It skirted the edges of old mining claims. Those were dangerous places. The ground was often unstable from forgotten excavations. Old automated defense systems sometimes still powered on, triggered by movement. The path avoided open ground, but the cover it offered was its own kind of threat. It would be a difficult journey. It was the most dangerous ground between here and the settlement. The marauders were a known variable. Their presence added a layer of constant threat. But the path itself was a hazard. Even without Warren's men hunting them, the land itself would test them. The canyons could flood without warning if rain fell on the high plateaus. The mining claims were riddled with hidden shafts and unstable ground. The journey would take days. It was the only way forward. There were no alternatives. The map showed that clearly. Elena stepped closer to the wall. Her eyes tracked the red line. She did not just look. She studied it, her scientist's mind engaged with the problem. She memorized the sharp turns in the third canyon. She noted the landmark of a distinctive lightning-blasted rock formation that marked a safe pass between two claims. She saw where the path crossed a dry riverbed twice. She was not just learning the route. She was absorbing it. She was building a three-dimensional picture in her mind. She was preparing. She was preparing to lead if she must. Cole's injury was a serious complication. His strength was fading. His ability to navigate, to make the quick decisions this terrain required, was compromised. She understood the new weight on her shoulders. The responsibility was shifting. She was no longer just a passenger on this journey. She was becoming the navigator, the one who would need to read the land and make the calls if he could not. Cole watched her study the map. He saw the focus on her face, the determination. She was not a victim waiting to be saved. She was not a burden to be carried. She was a partner assessing a shared problem. She was using her intelligence, her ability to learn and adapt as a tool. It was a different kind of strength than his, but it was just as vital. He saw her not as someone he had to protect, but as someone he could rely on. The dynamic in the small cabin had changed. It was a quiet, fundamental shift. The next journey would test their newfound trust in ways the open desert never had. The canyons would force them into close quarters. The difficult terrain would require constant communication and coordination. His injury would make him slow. Her lack of experience would make her unsure. They would have to rely on each other completely. There would be no room for error, no space for doubt. The trust they had built, the bond forged in the canyon fire, would be stretched to its limit. The rope was gone. It lay coiled on the floor near the door, a discarded tool. The physical tether between them had been severed by his own hand. But the connection it represented was stronger than ever. It was no longer a thing of woven fiber. It was a thing of shared survival, of mutual respect, of choices made together. It was invisible, but it was real. It was the thing that would guide them through the unwalked path ahead. The map showed the way. Their trust would get them there. The cabin was a brief pause. The real test was waiting for them on the other side of the ridge. On Hesperus, the line between curse and gift is a choice made under pressure. A touch that kills became a touch that saves. Their struggle shows that in the darkest soil, the strongest bonds take root. Remember this journey. Ask yourself what you would redefine to survive. What lines would you cross to protect another? Their path continues beyond this ridge. The desert watches them go. It holds no judgment, only the stark truth of consequence. The quiet of the sands returns, holding its breath for their next move.